I think it's a natural.
Yeah, well, I heard it. And then I was like, oh. Whew.
And Wilson battled her weight over several decades while keeping alive. Executives attempted to conceal her body from cameras, and within a year, she shed 60 pounds. However, that isn't even the most shocking thing. From an addiction to cocaine to abrupt from the bottom to the unexpected, sobriety Anne's path to motherhood at age 41 will leave you stunned at the age of 74, and she is telling the world that she is battling cancer. That and Wilson, the best is still to come. Was born in 1950 in San Diego into a military family that was always on the go. Her father, a major in the Marine Corps, had a peculiar tendency to invent words. Her mother established small customs to assist the children in managing their constant absence. Among the customs was feigning to before speaking, they'd dust off their shoes. And said goodbye to every house she moved 13 times. The places kept her before she was even 12. Shifting, but one thing remained: Sunday morning music was the same. Opera would fill the house. Ray Charles and classical records. Father would perform in the living room. Pancakes were sizzling in the kitchen. Its peculiar combination of discipline and Anne's life would be shaped by her inventiveness in ways that she wasn't yet aware of as the Taiwan and Panama were visited by the family. And ultimately made Seattle her home, and was continuously beginning anew at new schools, encounters new regulations by the age of 15. She had already visited 7 educational institutions on 3 continents, helped her become more flexible. However, it also gave her a sense of outsider every time she entered, as she was the new student once more in the classroom. Music was the sole constant in her life. It followed her around all the time. A source of solace and support, but music could not shield her from every danger. And battled her weight, and experienced a stammer that caused speaking in front of the class till she was constantly teased by nightmare kids. February 1st, while other girls and hardly received any when they counted their cards. She carried that day with her for years. She once said that puberty just made matters worse. Stated it wasn't pretty when she slid off the cliff. Not well liked enough, merely inconspicuous. The strain persisted even as an adult. Disappeared after Heart's record became well known. Executives were concerned about her weight and encouraged her to alter her appearance. Began using diet medications and avoiding meals in an effort to conform to the perception they wanted. She finally resorted to weight loss surgery, referring to it as the conclusion of ironically, the thing is a lifetime fight. It was most helpful to her during her most difficult years after becoming ill at the age of 12. After contracting mononucleosis, and became trapped in bed for months in order to amuse her. She never played the guitar her mother gave her. How to play it well, but it opened the door to music in an even more innovative way. It was significant to her because when she sung, her voice was free of stuttering. Powerful, wealthy, and lovely object that she didn't realize it gave her, perhaps for the first time, confidence. Following high school, she made the decision to attend. She began singing in Al-Anon music, in small bands in Seattle are looking for her. How things changed in 1970, she followed Michael Fisher, her lover, to Vancouver, where he had relocated to stay away from the Vietnam draft. Was a brave decision. She left her house to pursue love across a border, but it brought her directly to the band that would play a pivotal role in her life. She began in a small Catalano apartment, composing the tunes that would eventually become Heart's. One of the first hits was Magic Man. Motivated by her connection with Michael, everything started to come together. On Valentine's Day in 1973, Michael's Roger, a brother, recently joined the band. Following Nancy, Anne's younger sister, a talented guitarist, joined the group as well. Roger and Nancy began dating, which made the group seem more entangled. Family as opposed to a rock band, They practiced behind a converted chicken coop sorority house that summer. They made an alteration. Hart replaced Hocus Pocus as their name, and afterwards, he claimed that it felt magical but doesn't cover the 1973 to 1975 bills they performed in every pub and club that would host them on 4 nights a week. Some locations were really rough on the night. The spectators hardly raised their heads, and when they performed 24 at a place called The Cave, they relied on lead for several nights in a stretch. Covers of Zeppelins to protect people's slipping attention in their own tunes. Sometimes it worked whenever they could. It didn't always, but it forced them to better as a band that is tighter and sharper on toward the middle of the 1970s, and Wilson and her band, Hart, was just getting started. But things happened quickly. Their first major in October, the break almost happened by mistake. They were invited to open for Rod in 1975. Stewart at a Montreal gig that sold out was unexpected at the last minute, but it altered everything further following that evening. People began to take notice, and quickly Dreamboat Annie, their debut album, was gaining significant traction. One of the tracks, the one that caught our attention, was Magic Man, and written about her connection to the manager of the band, Michael Fisher. The lyrics were enigmatic and accessible to interpretation. According to some, was about a drug dealer, yet some people perceived it as a tale about a captivating romantic partner. As it went, the song rose to the top of the charts. 9 on both the album and the charts. Reached number 7 alongside Nancy Wilson. On guitar with 2 additional musicians, Magic Man's complete version stretched more than 5 minutes and allowed the musicians space to showcase their sound with a different song from Crazy on You. The record became exactly as crucially, it didn't chart as high. 35, but it was a watershed moment for and singing while it was being recorded in She Found Something in Vancouver. She didn't realize her voice was there. Struck new notes, exerted more effort, and opened up a sort of unadulterated power that would become her defining characteristic. The lyrics were a reaction to the world's instability and the strain and uncertainty of the mid-1970s wars, but rather of focusing on oneself or giving up. The song urged passion and untamedness, and in the midst of all, as Nancy subsequently clarified, that it was a means of saying, "Yes, let's go crazy even when the world is crazy." Collectively, as their song ascends, the Heart was increasing in popularity and charts, turning into a powerful force. Yet behind the scenes, things weren't going perfectly. Mushroom Records, their record label, made the decision to somewhat promote the band. Event in late 1976 startled Ann and Nancy. In Rolling, the label placed a full-page advertisement, "The Stone That Revealed the Two Sisters' Nudity," born beneath the headline. It was only the first time. The advertisement appeared to something from a gossip publication and suggested an incestuous relationship between the sisters. Were both really angry. Meanwhile, they were attempting to renew their agreement with Mushroom, thus, the timing seemed to be an attack. Only worsened during a Detroit performance. A radio promoter said something repulsive to Anne, reiterating the consequences of the in that particular instance sent her over the edge. The rage she felt after that encounter at her motel, she threw herself into a song, and picked up a pen and began to write. Barracuda, the resulting song, burning with rage and frustration, wasn't limited to a single ad or comment. It covered every manner in which the industry attempted to denigrate or regulate sexualization. Featuring its growling guitar melody and Barracuda's driving beat was powerful. Reached its peak at number 11 and emerged as one of the band's most well-known compositions. The lyrics become more profound, particularly for women who perceived in it a message of strength and defiance. Even as the battle with Mushroom Records took a long time, Hart continued to move quickly while Mushroom attempted to stop them and even issued an incomplete album without their authorization. The band proceeded with May 1977 saw the release of a new project, Little Queen, previously recorded in Seattle. It was all they had that year. been aiming for a blend of people and big booming and gentle melodies in hard rock despite the legal difficulties. Chorus's album became popular and peaked at number 9 on the charts before being sold. Songs like Love have sold over 3 million copies. Alive began softly, even dreamily, before escalating into a full-length rock song. Queen displayed their more quirky side, making analogies to Aerosmith, but with an solo song Kick having greater melody. It outgained popularity among fans that they weren't only opening for stadium gigs. Acts no longer served as the main attraction. By the end of 1977, Heart had managed to all 3 of their albums have something unique. Little and Dreamboat Annie magazine. At the same time Queen was in the charts. It became evident that they weren't merely riding a wave of good fortune, they came to continue making a sound that no one else could correspond. By the end of the 1970s, were disintegrating for Heart. The group was already facing pressure, but the actual issues started when Wilson's Michael Pfizer and I broke up. Michael had developed feelings for someone, and someone else were both sad. When her sister Nancy ended their relationship, Michael's brother, Roger Fisher, and the primary guitarist for the band, the heartbreak on Too Much Tension was produced by both sides. At a performance in Oregon, Roger burst into tears in front of a live. He destroyed his guitar on stage in front of the audience. Was pure agony, not a rock star move. He later claimed to be completely insane. Distress and that the circumstances had turned poisonous shortly after the bands. He was told by management that he was out exactly like that. One of the first members of Heart was the band would never be the same without him. Once more, the stress started in the 1980s. The band continued to expand what had made Heart unique by combining men and women collaborating. We're now crying. And Wilson subsequently stated that it was in a state of emotional distress. The band members began fighting, and it appeared to divided based on gender. The males, the women were the subject of gossip. Rumors about the males, but there wasn't middle ground. Simultaneously, the media focused more on the Wilson Moore sisters than any other band member. The others weren't pleased about that, and acknowledged that it offended the males. It eventually caused them to become enraged, evolved into enviousness, and labor. It got tougher and harder there to be together. Was an additional issue for the Wilson. The groupie was not shared among the sisters. Culture prevalent in rock music. They disapproved of the treatment of women traveling, and they didn't conceal their sentiments that caused people to disagree with some of the band's male members. Things got uneasy and stated that they thought they had to mislead the wives of the band members regarding everything that was going on during the tour. Grew increasingly dishonest the more the sisters made an effort to adhere to their values. As they grew farther away from the other members of the gang, weren't merely resisting their bandmates, they were resisting the direction the band operated as. The entire industry became more well-known and the money began to shift everything, and recalled how they all started out impoverished and banded together to pursue the same dream. But once prosperity arrived, so did fame. Was altered by the money and people. Wilson's sisters in an odd situation. They were secured in a motel room, separated from their fellow musicians. It was difficult to connect with pressure. Anyone the dream they had together began to wane. Individuals had their own objectives. The band was no longer a close-knit one. Nonetheless, it was gradually disintegrating. After everything fell, piece by piece, Heart went through a difficult time apart. Baby Range's 1980 album was still successful. However, the subsequent ones weren't private. When the audition was released in 1982, it didn't sell as planned the next year. Passion Works' performance wasn't any better. First participants Steve Fossen and new members joined the band when Michael D. Royer left. Entered, however, there was a chemistry problem. Even the well-known producers they collaborated with failed to assist. One producer and left, claiming that there were no hits in there. Had captured and who subsequently acknowledged she was having a lot of parties at the time. she was misplaced and having difficulties at the studio weren't functioning, and the band was dropped by their label. Midway through the 1980s, Heart made a significant return. Their album Heart from 1985 was a massive success, selling millions of copies. Or reinstalling the band, they had blockbuster after hit. Even their very first These Dreams is the #1 song. However, while the world witnessed and Wilson's accomplishment was silently navigating one of the most difficult periods of her life, the emergence of Everything was altered by MTV. Yet it was no longer just about the music. Regarding the picture, and was supposed to appear like a model despite the fact that her voice was initially what made the band unique. Putting on cosmetics and sporting large hair felt good, but the enjoyment was short-lived. Swiftly changed to a steady pressure, intense pressure to not be who she was. Her body, not her, was the object of judgment. Talent, and the more well-known they became, the N claimed that during those years it got worse. Felt like her career's low point. As a woman in every picture and interview shot, each video included a whisper or direct remarks regarding her appearance rather than way she didn't sound like what she appeared to be staged, just the way she appeared for a single instant. Continued to bother her years after it demonstrate that she was traversing an airport and obtained a concert review. She almost broke after reading what she did. Her singing was not torn apart by the writer. Not the music. Only the way she looked. Her voice was really nasty, to put it simply. And intimate that she needed to rush to a simply to cry and catch her in the restroom stall. She felt as though she was losing her breath. Mind, as she had previously completed, she starved of everything to become intelligent. She took diet tablets on her own. She appeared normal to anyone outside of her. However, she was constantly hungry on the inside. Subsequently stated, "People believed I looked typical, but I was truly starving myself. And they gave me kudos for it." How messed up is that? Even after she halted, she was starving herself in the middle of the 1980s. Didn't get any simpler. She put on weight rapidly, and the music business didn't let her forget that television had replaced subsequently. Music videos were more important than ever. But Anne wasn't treated well by the cameras. Fair enough, they concealed her body with deception. They captured her visage in close-up. Put on large coats for her, while her Nancy, the slimmer sister, grew full. She posed, danced, and moved in body shots. Openly and observed everything. Everyone did. Somebody even post that on the internet? Nancy would constantly be seen wandering around in footage taken while Anne was hiding. The message was very clear, but it didn't match the picture they desired for those in the industry. Didn't conceal it either. She was informed bluntly, "You don't want to be viewed in its whole, okay?" And recalled that incident, which was obviously painful. These comments accumulated and had an impact. How she perceived her own confidence began to disintegrate. Record executives were worse. They were concerned about Anne's body would damage the band's reputation. It made no difference how well she sang. What mattered, she claimed, was her appearance. In those days, being a woman meant having to perform, sing, and appear like the model. One review particularly affected her. Her voice was not mentioned at all. Simply tore apart her appearance. "I had to hide in an airport after reading it. A restroom stall to hide her from view. Over time, the strain caused her to cry. She began to have stage fright. She thought she was having panic attacks. Damaging the band's reputation simply by the stress became too much to handle. In 2002, Anne made the decision to take control. She underwent surgery to lose weight. Referred to as a lap band, but it wasn't as intense compared to other surgical procedures. However, she was around 100 pounds overweight. And enduring knee pain, as well as following the procedure, she shed 60 pounds and she felt lighter and more liberated in less than a year. Her body no longer hurt as much as it once had. She could sing and move once more. It transformed her life painlessly, yet she was struggling with more than just weight. And also had trouble with fighting. Years of cocaine and alcohol addiction. She claimed that cocaine was a part of her life. Was present throughout the videos and music. Everything that remained a joy was taken away. Her numb, and despite losing buddies of drug users, such as Andrew Wood, she couldn't relate to Kurt Cobain and Lane Staley. Don't quit yet, she hasn't developed an addiction. Suddenly, it gradually increased the harsh remarks on her physique, the pressure to perform, the ongoing nervousness overall. She claimed to have read one. She had to flee since the review was so terrible. To the restroom in order to relax. After some time, she started using drugs and alcohol. Way to deal with the fact that she wasn't alone. She once claimed that the majority of rock she knew musicians who had experienced only a small number of people avoided it. Finally, in 2009, she experienced a transformation. Reached her breaking point, she halted drinking without hesitation. She did not participate in a 12-step program. Rather, she relied on her pals, relatives and other musicians who had received clean. She also attended therapy, and she was aware of if she didn't stop, thought she would pass away sober. But she didn't simply save her life, it inspired her to be creative. Back, she claimed that it was like lifting a tarp off her thoughts while she was intoxicated. She was unable to compose music, simply wouldn't come till she was clean. Everything changed, and her songs evolved into her voice was louder and more powerful. In her 2012 album Fanatic, Heart gave it her all. That fresh vitality into tunes like Dear Old Mashallah. In America, she also started to more clearly view her life. She stated that addiction deceives you by making you believe you're shielding yourself from discomfort, but it truly disconnects you from everything. Good. And sobriety also altered how she managed her connection with Nancy. Not all the time did they agree, but Ann wanted to experiment with the band Nancy. Wished to maintain what was effective, that created a rift between them, but despite everything, they continued to love one another. Things like this happen, observed another Ann. But after that, they improve, and we become in love. Each other more. At the beginning of 1991, Ann Wilson took a decision that will change his life. At the pinnacle of her rock stardom, she decided to become a mommy in band Heart. She adopted a baby daughter on her own, named on February 3rd. Marie was born at the time, being single wasn't common. Women, particularly in the spotlight to adopt kids,